Hello and welcome back to the Boropolis podcast. As usual, I am joined with Nathan, and this week, we've got plenty to get into, haven't we? 7 goals scored by Middlesbrough, a few goals scored by opposition teams. The unbeaten run has come to an end, and then we just turned into prime Brazil yesterday, Nathan. So, I mean, firstly, how are you? Also, how are you finding this stage of the season, given the fact that feet are up, really. There's nothing to worry about. There's everything to enjoy. We can watch everyone else's demise and seasons being ended without the real stress of anything at our end.
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange one, but yeah, I'm all right, Chris. It's nice to be able to go into games feeling not any sort of nerves at all, or that there's anything riding on the game apart from the odd position, I suppose, which at this stage of the season doesn't matter because you don't get prizes for where we are at this moment in time. But yeah, finding it really enjoyable actually, watching us play some free flowing stuff and scoring plenty of goals with it, conceding a couple at the other end. But yeah, really enjoyable. Enjoying watching the championship at the moment, if I'm honest, and quite gutted that there's only one more week to go. But yeah, it's quite enjoyable watching the Borough at this moment in time, and it's given me plenty of optimism to move on into next season and going forward. So what about yourself, Chris? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really good actually. And yesterday it put a smile on my face. As you say, at this stage of the season, it's just about getting optimism for next season. And those optimism levels even after Leeds, to be honest, given the result, they were sky high, and they were only even more heightened yesterday, to be honest. We've got a whole host, really, of individual performances to praise and wax lyrical about. A few sort of surprise packages and people getting their chances towards the end of the season. And I'm here for it. I'm absolutely here for it. I mean, again, we're probably going to spend a large majority of the podcast talking about the best striker in the division. I'm guessing anyone listening to this podcast will already know who I'm referring to there. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this one, to be honest, because plenty of drama, even though it's not sort of season defining drama. It's just drama that you can enjoy in the moment and then continue your weekend without being too disheartened. So we'll rewind back to last Monday, Nathan. Obviously, given results and things that had fallen into place beforehand, we knew that the playoffs were done and dusted. And I think going into the Leeds game, it was something like we still needed a 16 goal swing or something ridiculous like that. We knew the playoffs were out of reach, but we also, at that stage, did have one main aim, and that was to try and ruin Leeds' season. Now, fast forwarding a little bit, given the type of challenge that we presented to them, I think it took all of the stuffing out of them to the point that they just completely ran out of steam against QPR and got battered 4-0. However, going into that game, we thought we could inflict a result on them that would derail their promotion push, and we very nearly did. Overall, just a really, really great advert for Championship football, a really great atmosphere at the Riverside, and quite strangely enough, like I said earlier, I come away from the Riverside after a 4-3 defeat, full of optimism, and went home pretty pleased overall, to be honest.
Yeah, it was nice, wasn't it? It was a bit of a strange one. Obviously, we've got a couple of players on loan from Leeds that couldn't play in Ayling and Greenwood. So I suppose in that aspect, you were already sort of not at full strength. Dykesteel and Silvera came into the side, two players that have been bit part players in the side all year round, really. And yeah, it was really pleasing the way that we attacked the game, the same as we did at Ellen Road, not really afraid of Leeds and their threat, which of course is massive with players at the top of the pitch, Somerville, Nonto, Rutter, Bamford, the top players in this level. And yeah, I thought it was a pretty good performance, really. Carved them open at times, earned plenty of opportunities on their goal. scored some really good goals ourselves. And yeah, I suppose we were the architects of our own downfall a little bit by giving some sloppy goals away and also an incompetent linesman as well. But yeah, it's sort of that one where if we had something to play for and we'd been sort of let down by a linesman in this game, you'd be quite furious. But given our situation, it didn't necessarily matter all too much, and the performance was pretty pleasing. So coming away from the Riverside, as you say, both of us had a chat after the game, and we were both full of praise for the team and both very optimistic about a couple of performances that were in that night.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, the way that we approached the game was probably the most pleasing. And I think Carrick obviously knew, he's very level-headed, but he's not stupid. He knew that the playoffs were out of reach. And we actually thought that given, like we've seen a few times this season, he may approach the Leeds game with a little bit more caution and try and frustrate them, perhaps, utilize that back five we've seen a few times. But actually, we took the game to Leeds, and Leeds, I think, probably weren't really expecting it. And you saw that from when we go in front. Obviously, quite quickly, they turned it around, but it wasn't just a case of Leeds, controlling the game and we were just taking our chances. I thought for the most part, we took the game to Leeds and were the better side. If I think a draw would have been a fair result, because don't get me wrong, they had some incredible moments of brilliance. I mean, Somerville, obviously, he wins Player of the Season, Player of the Year, what Tuba won last year. Not a patch on Tuba's season last year, by the way, but he's been outstanding. You've seen this week that he's been linked with a move to Liverpool in the summer. And I mean, in fairness to him, especially Leeds' fourth goal. Yes, okay, there's bits that you can pick out from our perspective and think that's not very great, but he really has flashes of brilliance, and he gave Anthony Dijksteel a torrid evening. And I guess that brings us on to the first part of discussion, really, that we did want to discuss. We don't enjoy this part of the podcast, but I think in this stage of the season, especially, you look at individual performances. For the last probably 3 podcasts now, we've looked and talked about individuals from time to time, and Anthony Dijksteel is one of those where you do feel, especially with the addition of Luke Ayling, and I must say, I think sometimes when a player is missed, you actually realise sort of how effective they are more, if that makes sense. And I think Luke Ayling's absence against Leeds almost sort of went in his favour again, because you saw what a change it makes not having him in the team from the way that we've played over the past however many weeks whilst we've been on this good run. But just in terms of Anthony Dijksteel's performance, I will start by saying it's extremely difficult for a player to be out of the loop for that long and then get thrown in against one of the league's best players. However, you've said it plenty of times and been strong on that opinion. I've always been of the opinion that I'm not sure he's a right back, but given the right system, Anthony Dijksteel can be a useful player at this level. However, I think Leeds was probably the final nail in Anthony Dijksteel's Middlesbrough career. It was sloppy. It was clunky. It just wasn't good. And I did feel sorry for him a little bit. I just thought it looked like a player, and it was a player that hasn't played for long enough, probably needs a move, needs to be playing regular. And overall, yeah, you sort of thought it's not a pleasant watch. And okay, we've moved on from it now, but I think the phrase that I used at halftime was, "This is comparable to Engel at Sheffield Wednesday type level performance." It was a bit of a toasting, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and I think everything that you've said there is right, Chris. That when you haven't played for so long and then you're thrown in out of the cold against Somerville, who's high on confidence, playing at a ridiculous level at this moment in time. And yeah, you're playing up against one of the best players in the league this year. You're going to be in for a tough afternoon, but you have to help yourself and sort of don't make silly mistakes. And something that I've constantly reiterated on this podcast about Anthony Dijksteel, when Michael Carrick came in, we thought that he would be a player that would fit into this system in terms of the way that we played last year with the left back bombing on and the right back coming inside and helping almost like a third centre half. Dijksteel, we thought would have been perfect for that role, given his pace, his strength, his and his attributes defensively. But every single time he has been given an opportunity, whilst Michael Carrick has been in charge, he's either got himself sent off, given away a penalty, just done something stupid. And as Ruters ran him up the line at 1-0, you're thinking, just let him go. He's done you. He's gone, and he's just the worst he can do is cross the ball in, and you might make a save or a block. You don't know what's going to happen, and Dijksteel just kicks him for no reason. It looks like something you'd see on a Sunday morning from someone that's been out the night before, half cut still, and they just can't be asked chasing back. It's so poor, and yeah, within a couple of minutes of going 1-0 up in the game, you give Leeds a way back into the game. And I came up to you at half time and said, look, that it's what I've been talking about. And that is pretty much the reason why Anthony Dijksteel won't be at Middlesbrough in a couple of months' time because of moments like that that have been all too consistent in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah. And I hate to use the word because there were certain spells during Anthony Dijksteel's Middlesbrough career where I genuinely thought we've got a really, really good championship level defender on our hands. And I think I still, do you know what? I'll still stand by it. I think in a back five, as the right-sided centre half, he could still be a useful player for someone in this division, and he wouldn't look out of place. And he'll probably have games where he'll lock up a winger, and you'll think, do you know what? Yeah, he's a good right back, but I think just too much has happened now where it's almost got to the stage where you almost think under Carrick, and this feels really harsh, but I'm going to say it anyway, he's become somewhat of a liability. And I think in the end, as you say, that's why his Middlesbrough career will probably come to an end in the summer. And yeah, I think it's pretty evident that Carrick, he's had enough chances now where Dijksteel's been fit and he hasn't used them, that it's probably going to be the end. But yeah, I mean, one player again that's sort of split opinion, and I feel like we've discussed him at length multiple times. Lewis O'Brien was the hot topic this week on Borough X or Twitter as it was formerly known. And he, I thought, was better against Leeds. I thought there was signs there, him driving through midfield and some of his passing and his tenacious nature in midfield, where I thought, yeah, do you know what? We're starting to see little glimpses of the player that we all thought we were going to get. A lot of people were talking about his stats this week. A lot of people were talking about the eye test. And usually the case is people are trying to make an argument based off stats and not the eye test. This week, people were trying to make an argument based off the eye test rather than his stats because his stats aren't great. When in fact, and I'm going to say, I do think he actually had an all right game against Leeds. However, I am very much still in the camp, and I know this has become somewhat unpopular actually, where I'm still not sold on Lewis O'Brien. I think given numerous factors, wages, potential fee, Forrest might still come down and he might not even be available. I don't know if he offers enough for us to probably spend the 4 or 5 million, I would guess, that Nottingham Forest will probably rate him at, possibly even more. I don't necessarily think he's a bad player. I personally view Lewis O'Brien as someone that should be playing in a 3. I don't think he suits that double pivot in the way that we play. And he's a useful player. He can probably go and be a very good player in a specific system. But for the price that we're going to be paying, and given the fact that Hackney hopefully will be here next season, Johnny Howson will have hopefully got another year, I'd still have those two ahead of him. Yes, Howson may well slow down, as we say every year, but there's not enough of either side of his game, whether it be attacking or defensively, where I think, or even just Hayden Hackney probably doesn't have that overriding strength to his game. But his ability to move the ball quickly is what you sort of love from him. And he does drive forward with the ball as well. O'Brien, I'm just still yet to see that. And I think it spoke volumes, the fact that he didn't start yesterday's game as well.
Yeah, I think you're probably right in terms of we haven't been able to see the Lewis O'Brien that we anticipated that we were going to see. Obviously, he succeeded most at Huddersfield in a midfield 3. And yeah, I suppose having been out of football for 6 months and then going to play in the MLS, and obviously, no disrespect, but the level's nowhere near the championship. Coming back in, having a serious injury that kept him out for quite a long time, and then being thrown in a difficult spell. I think we've only really started to see Lewis O'Brien perform to anywhere near the level we thought he would be in the last maybe month or so. But yeah, I thought on the whole against Leeds, he was okay. I didn't think he was necessarily great. The thing that stands out to me about his performance, and yes, granted, the goal should have been offside, but the way that Archie Gray runs beyond him, Lewis O'Brien tries and fails to take him down, and he's just left in a heap in the middle of the pitch as Leeds break forward and then score. I think that that's been missed by plenty. I think if you're going to try and bring someone down, you have to make it. Just kick him. You have to make that. But yeah, just on his general play, yes, he does okay defensively for the most part, or at least he has done in the last month or so. When it was him and Barlasser in midfield, it was utterly shambolic because both of them don't want to defend. But having House in there as almost like the 6 out of the 2 helps massively in that. But if I'm honest, I think that having Howson as our only real 6 option, whereas we have Barlasser, O'Brien, and Hackney as 8s. It's really starting to, or it has this season disrupted the balance a lot when Howson's been out the team. So if I'm Kieran Scott and Middlesbrough, I'm more looking for a 6, if I'm honest, because I think with Howson, yes, we continue to talk about him as being one of our most influential players. He's out of contract in the summer. I have no sort of doubts that he'll be offered a new deal and he will sign that new deal and he'll be here next season. But he's not getting any younger. We've been saying it since we started the podcast 3 years ago that he's not getting any younger. And
We still haven't replaced him, have we?
we still haven't replaced him because I suppose there hasn't been a need yet because he's still playing at a ridiculously good level. But we do need to start bringing someone in that's going to be phased in eventually, and that is really important to the future of our midfield. But Yeah, I think the balance is the overriding theme, and we can't just continue to sign eights when we've only got 1 6 in that double pivot. So yeah, I'm not necessarily sure on Lewis O'Brien yet. I don't think he will be here next season. That's just my hunch.
Yeah, and I think it was obviously a topic that I wanted to discuss because he's made it apparent that if things fall into place, he'd like to stay. But yeah, I mean, everyone's got their own opinion. I personally just think, and especially like we said just earlier in the podcast, sorry, the fact that he didn't play yesterday, he may well have had a knock, but I just thought it was a little bit strange. To me, yesterday, it felt like even though Luke Thomas started, obviously Engel missed the Leeds game as well through personal reasons, but it did feel a little bit like there was no Greenwood either. Is Carrick starting now to really look towards next season? I know there's only one game remaining now, but is he, without saying so, offering a little bit of a hint as to the decisions that have been made? Luke Ayling started yesterday. You'd like to think he will be offered a deal, despite the fact that Sheffield United and Birmingham seemingly think that they're going to snatch him. I really hope that doesn't happen. Sheffield United probably will offer him some decent wages, but he's the one now for me where you think, yeah, if any of the loan signings deserve a deal, it's him. And we've covered that already. Another assist yesterday, by the way. But yeah, just in terms of the Leeds game, obviously we're not going to sort of dwell on the offside decision. Nanto's offside. He puts them 3-2 up. In between the offside decision and Leeds going 2-1 up, that man again scores a worldie and also then proceeds to pile on the pressure in the final few minutes with a quite ridiculous header. I mean, we're going to talk about him during the Cardiff game as well, but genuinely, when I say this, I don't think it's within any question. Middlesbrough currently have the most informed striker in the division in their side. And my goodness, if he doesn't make you excited for next season, I don't know what does. Yesterday, he gets his 17th of the season. You think back to the spell that he had out. For a large chunk, he was being used as an impact substitute. And I mean, you could genuinely make a shout now that Latilaf has put himself in the shout for Player of the Year. And I don't think he deserves it, but he's for him over this little run, for him to put himself in with the shout, it just feels ridiculous. But again, I don't think it's a ridiculous statement. And those 2 goals against Leeds, it's the variety in his finishes at the moment that's impressing me the most. His general play is improving, and it's almost more incredible than what Chuba Akpom did in terms of a shock factor last season, that he just has developed this absolute killer instinct from absolutely nowhere.
Yes, just remarkable, isn't it, really? I don't know how it's happened, because this run that we've been on since the last international break, that began on Good Friday at Southampton, and we saw Lath lead the line, get played through 1-on-1 in the second half, and just pass the ball into Bazunu's hands from 12 yards, maybe. And you think, yeah, we're really struggling here. And then obviously he pops up with an instinctive header, and you think, great. But we spoke on that podcast that maybe he's just an instinctive finisher. Don't give him time. Don't give him any sort of time to think about what he's doing. Just make everything that he does purely instinctive, and he'll probably score goals. And now you see more so with the first goal against Leeds, where he's got the ball and he's being crowded out. he can't necessarily get his shot away. Ampadu's closing him down, and you see the skill of Latte Lath to just fake a shot that makes Ampadu commit, gives him that extra half yard to reverse the shot back into the top corner. And yeah, it's a great finish. Gets you back into the game. And then obviously the goal that makes Leeds' backsides twitch for the last 5 minutes or so. Alex Gilbert came off the bench, great lofted ball over the top for Latte Lath, and you're thinking, what's he going to do here? He could take it down and try and just get us up the pitch, but he's spotted Meslier off his line. He's gone for the header. It's one thing going for it, but actually executing it is another, and it's just a top header, a top header, and it reiterates the point that his aerial ability for a player who's relatively short is ridiculous. He actually leaps and flicks this on as well, and it's a remarkable goal. And yeah, I think we all were sort of on the edge of our seats at the end of the game. The fans that actually stayed and didn't think that the game was over. And yeah, we nearly got a fantastic finale as well with a flick on from Baldini, and I thought for all that was holy that Rav was going to pile in at the back post, but Junior Firpo just got his noggin on it and flicked it away. But yeah, it was a cracking game on Monday night, and Latiola is really beginning to look the part.
Yeah, he really is. And like I said last podcast, I think one of the sort of main praises that you can give him is he has made it pretty abundantly clear now that although Middlesbrough will still sign a striker in the summer, he is the main man going into next season. There's absolutely no doubt about it now. I think it's getting to that stage. He's made it clear. He is the main man going into next season. And as I say, we'll still sign a striker. But, I mean, my goodness. If you think of him and someone else supporting him with, I don't know, 7 to 10 goals as well, another striker giving you that kind of option, it really is exciting. And yeah, you mentioned him briefly there with the great ball for the third goal that Middlesbrough scored, the assist for Latte Lath's header. Alex Gilbert come on the pitch, had a spell, really nice touches, a great pass, as you say, for Latte Lath's header. And I think that was, I guess, one of the main sort of talking points this week as well amongst Borough fans that, do you know what, we've got nothing to play for. Give him a chance against Cardiff. He's come on and he's done what he could in that short space of time and basically impressed to the point where you think he deserves a chance. He's waited long enough now. My goodness, does he take his chance against Cardiff? I mean, yes, okay, Cardiff are dead and I was going to say dead and buried there. I think that's a bit harsh. I would say on the beach. I mean, so are we, but still. And you almost watch yesterday's game, and I'm not saying that this should have been the case, but you watch it and think, hang on a second, where's this kid been all season? And Carrick's spoken about is the fact that he's matured, the fact that he's improved throughout the season, the fact that his training's been better as of late. And he spoke yesterday after the game, Alex Gilbert, and said that he was pretty much viewing this game as almost like a cup final for himself because he's waited that long. And I mean, there's a whole host of other impressive performances, but we might as well start on Gilbert because he was sort of the main headline from the team selection. I mean, that 10 role just looked absolutely perfectly suited to that man yesterday, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And you've got to be wondering, why has it taken so long? Obviously, Carrick has viewed him as not ready for all of the season up until now. He's been reduced to 5 minute cameos at the end of games where we've either already won them or were dead and buried in the game. And yeah, he impressed against Leeds. Some nice touches in that one. Pleased to see him given a start yesterday so we could see him properly and see what he could do. And I don't want to get too carried away with it because obviously it is a dead rubber game. Cardiff are on the beach, but he looked really good yesterday. Some bright touches, some really good passes, some nice little intricate movements in and around Lath and Azaz. And yeah, obviously tops it off with a fantastic finish for the fourth goal. So yeah, really pleased for him, and he sounded so sort of relieved and happy in his interview at full time as well. So yeah, fair play to him, finally given his chance, and he's given Carrick a little bit of food for thought, I think, heading into the last game of the season and also into next season, whether he's going to be in his plans for the first team or whether he was going to be going out on loan. There's certainly a lot of food for thought, as mentioned there. So, yeah, really pleased for Alex Gilbert, and he's certainly one to watch. Another one that's been signed in last summer's recruitment list that, look, at the start, we had our question marks over a good couple of signings. And as the season's sort of gone on, we've certainly been proved wrong with a couple, and it's nice. You'd rather that. I'd rather be proven wrong on players in terms of me calling them X, Y, and Z, and they turn out to be a really good footballer because that's what it's all about. We want this model to work of selling players that we've brought in for minimal fees and developing them into real top players. So yeah, really pleased for Gilbert. And yeah, not only him, Azaz looked pretty good in the game against Leeds, and again yesterday looks like he's starting to find his way in this Borough side. So yeah, real promising signs from a couple of the players.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you just look at the performance yesterday, and as I alluded to earlier on in the podcast, there's just so much to be excited about. And I think undoubtedly we still this summer it's going to be interesting because I think we're maybe two or three players away in terms of the starting 11 plus sort of the first subs that you'd look at, the first players that might come in and out of the team, away from having a really competitive team. That's if we don't suffer some ridiculous injury crisis again next season. But the performance in general, there wasn't really any performance at all where you thought, I'm not sure about that, or that's not really at the top of the sort of list of good things about yesterday's performance. You look at Dieng, yes, okay, he makes a blunder, but makes an outrageous save early on in the game to tip one over the bar, does the exact same in the second half. There's your number one for next season. There's no doubt about it. There was question marks about Dieng when he was brought in. Listen, I don't think he will go anywhere. Who knows what can happen in the transfer window? It does strange things happen, but there's your number one sorted for next season. Right back, Luke Ayling gets an assist yesterday, looks solid again, is available on a free. You just hope that we can get it sorted quickly. And I think most people now, at least if I was to put a percentage on it, 85% of Borough fans have said, yeah, do you know what? We weren't sure, but now he's won himself a contract. And he might not Luke Ayling might not view it that way. He might have thought of it as, I'm just going to put myself in the shop window and whoever wants me can come and get me. But I think one contract offer on the table is certainly going to be from us, because one of the main things that has pleased me the most about this run is, yes, we've seen the players that are a little bit younger and were unproven and had question marks this season. They've started to come good, but there's also been a certain mix in the team where you think those type of players that we've missed this season, when you think of the Darragh Lenahans or, okay, yes, we're talking about that position right now, but the Tommy Smiths, where you think, as well as the effervescent, creative, fast thinking younger players we have, if you think about adding a little bit more experience to that, and I'm not talking about just experience for the sake of experience, I'm talking about really solid championship players with experience. Luke Ayling adds to that. And you just think partnering a Ralph Vandenberg with a Darragh Lenihan, or, even a Riley McGree or a Marcus Force, they're experienced championship players now. And that's what I mean. The blend of the squad has really started to quite excite me, to be honest. And I think we do need a few more of those experienced types. But Luke Ayling definitely adds into that group of experienced heads, the type of players that you need in a dressing room. You always hear players talk about the way that Johnny Howson conducts himself as a captain. He leads by example. Luke Ayling also does that, but he's a shouter as well. And I don't think that can go unrecognised. And I know it might seem like, oh, well, it's not a good attribute. You can't get a stat on expected shouts per game. But if you understand football, you know that them type of characters are really important. And then the likes of Matt Clark, I mean, we've joked about it. I'm still, for me, when everyone's fit, he still wouldn't be in my starting Middlesbrough team, but he's certainly not a bad option. I mean, there's just so many positives, really, isn't there? Nathan, you can continue. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through the full team yesterday. And I think, listen, I'm not sold on signing him permanently, but I even thought Luke Thomas was all right, to be honest.
Yeah, he was all right, and actually played a part in that first goal against Leeds as well by taking the ball off Nonto. But yeah, everything that you've said there about you can see the camaraderie of the team as well. It is really nice to see, especially after that fourth goal yesterday. You see Luke Ayling fly over to the away end from the opposite end of the pitch with his arms out wide, doing an aeroplane like celebration, and you see his relationship with Latte Lath on social media as well. And yeah, it is really nice to see. And yeah, I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks in the run. I think I said it on Twitter after Hull, and some guy had replied to me with like loads of laughing faces and then a big paragraph, and within a couple of seconds he deleted it. He must have just realized that he was wrong immediately. But the point that I made was we aren't too far away, really. We're a couple of quality players, what I would call difference makers, away from being a force next season. And look, I don't think that the league is going to be quite as competitive at the top end as it has been this season with runaway, well, a runaway top three/4, if you want to count Southampton in that. But yeah, I think that we won't necessarily be too far away, but there are a lot of asterisks next to that, which are you can't lose any players that we've got currently. We can't quite have anywhere near as many injuries as we've had this season. And please, 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 can we just do our business before the start of the season and not by the end of September after 10 games have already gone? Because that, and I understand we've had managerial changes with Wilder last season and changing of style, but we can't just commit suicide for the first 10 games of the season. It just can't happen, because if we hadn't this year, we'd be in the playoffs. And this season has been distinctly average, really. We've had two good runs of results, one in September through October, and the one that we're currently in. Anywhere else across the season, We've been probably shite is the word.
I mean, let's not forget for a certain part of the season, there was genuinely talk of relegation on this podcast.
Yeah, yeah, there was. And look, it was fair at the time. 6 points, 6 points above the drop zone in March. And yeah, now you think what we were worried about, because we've had some players back. We've fixed up our style of play and formation. And yes, we have started to revert back to what we actually are, which is the 4-2-3-1. And I'm glad that the five was just a short-term fix, but it allows for a different style of play in different games. And yeah, we aren't far away. We really aren't far away. And seeing the teams that are coming down and the teams that are coming up and the teams that are going to be in the division with us next season, some teams in this division that you'd think are going to be competitive have got a real rebuild on their hands in the summer. You look at the likes of Sunderland. They were probably on par with us going into this season. And I mean, had they not started well, they'd probably be in a relegation battle, in all honesty. But yeah, we're not far away, is the point. We've started to show some real good signs at the top of the pitch, and obviously we've built that on solid foundations at the back. It is really nice to be in April with a week to go, with quite literally just a little bit of competition to finish eighth, ahead of that little pack that we've been in for maybe a month or so, with the Hulls, the Norwiches, who have obviously kicked on, but Coventry, Preston, and Cardiff that have all been in and around us during this month-long run that we've gone on. So it'd be really nice to finish at the top of that group, and above Coventry as well. That would be really nice.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why I'm so optimistic, and it sort of ties in with what you said about getting those difference makers through the door, is this season hasn't been about the gap between ourselves and the top teams in the division. We've competed against all of them. Yes, okay, Leeds, they've taken 6 points off us, but we've probably given them two of the most difficult games all season. We've give Leicester a spanking, well, a spanking once. The other game, we rode our luck a little bit and Greenwood whips on in the top corner. We've competed with Southampton, 4 points from them. We've, okay, yes, taken a point from Ipswich, but in fact, I don't even want to get into Ipswich because, yeah, let's just not. But that's what I'm saying. Overall, the problems have come this season from when you need those difference makers the most. The Rotherhams at home, the Sunderlands at home, the endless list of teams in the bottom half of the table where you just need to break a team down. Those have been the games that have let us down this season. It's nothing to do with the fact that we drew against Hull and we drew against Ipswich. Even Norwich. I mean, yes, okay, the Borja Sainz red card, potentially moment of the season, but we've still beat them twice. And I think, as you say, if you get them difference makers in, you start to think differently about, well, we're not in a situation like we were last season where you've just said there, teams are going to have a little bit of a rebuild. We have now the nucleus of a very good championship team. We still need to add components to that, and obviously injuries have to go an awful lot better than what they have done. Just in terms of on that point, I did see that there was a sort of fan meeting, I think set up by Fly Me to the Moon. That may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was the case, where supporters spoke to Steve Gibson this week, and he said himself one of the key takeaways basically from what the fans who had been in attendance said was there needs to be a real look into the department around why we've had so many injuries this season. And you know, that can't be disregarded. Availability is the best ability you can have, really, because you can constantly go out and perform. We haven't had that at all this season. And people might say it's a cheap excuse. We've still got an okay squad. But when you think of the players and the lengths of injuries that we've had, it's no coincidence that we've had such an up and down season. And as you say, if that can be sorted out, we've got a really good nucleus already. We're not looking at like we were, sorry, at the back end of last season, where you're thinking you've got 5 of your best players all going. How do we replace them? You're looking at it and thinking, if we can add so and so there, maybe someone to, be an option off the bench there, then yeah, we might be there or thereabout. But as you say, please, for the love of God, Middlesbrough, just don't hang about until the final 2 weeks of the transfer window. And also, it's somewhat the unknown, the fact that we're finishing the season so strongly. I honestly can't remember a season where we've had nothing to play for a while going into the final few games. Okay, yeah, last season, but I mean, we still had the playoffs to look forward to. But I think maybe back the season before we went to Wembley with Karanka, I seem to remember we finished that season fairly strong. Danny Graham and Lee Tomlin went on a little bit of a tear together. But I mean, apart from that, this is a little bit of the unknown. And you look at the last 10 games form table. Okay, yes, it's very unlike Middlesbrough to go ahead and start a season in good form, but it's got to help. And it's got to help having the nucleus, as I say, of the team that's performing and ending the season well, potentially going to be there next season. So, yeah, I mean, loads of reasons to be optimistic. We'll talk about some of the goals now, because there was a couple of absolute worldies. The Gilbert finish, it's a great move, and he smashes it in the top corner. Latte laugh. I honestly, do you know what? Honestly, right, and not in a sort of taking the piss way. I honestly burst out laughing when he smashed it in the back of the net yesterday. Coming over his shoulder, bounced, left foot, half volley, smash, past the keeper, goes over to the corner with the Middlesbrough fans. And I just started laughing. I was like, we've actually got a ridiculously good champ. I don't know if this is just going to be one of those streets won't forget, like, purple patches. I hope it's not, but like, I was just in disbelief at what has happened to you. You're honestly unbelievable all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? And I think going back to the conversation that we just had on him about half an hour ago now, we spoke about instinctive, and when he has time to think, he usually mucks up. And this one, as he's going through, and I'm thinking, this will be one that he probably misses because he's got time to think. He's sort of knocked the ball forward with his head, good first touch. And then you see Phillips getting back alongside him, and I'm thinking, maybe he's took this a little bit too wide. He's actually knocked it to his left hand side to keep Phillips away, and then just leathered it in the top corner at the near post. Yeah, he is taking the piss, isn't he?
He quite
He's
literally is.
he's truly remarkable, and as you mentioned, you just got hope this isn't a purple patch. You really do, because as you mentioned, the variety of finishes that we've seen over the past month have been truly fantastic. Really, you've seen headers that are simple ones, like the one at Ipswich, down into the ground and back across goal. You've seen the one obviously the second goal against Leeds, which is just a ridiculous finish to even have the audacity to try it. And then nice ones like that one yesterday, where he's just hit it so clean with his weaker foot. And earlier on in the season, he would have chopped back in. He would have chopped back in and probably struggled to chop back in, lose his foot in as he has chopped back in and then passed it into the keeper's hands. But just to see the confidence to just take the shot on your weaker foot and just bury it in the top corner. Yeah, class, absolutely class. And yeah, the Gilbert move, fantastic. Some real nice play. Azaz at the heart of it, recovering Gilbert's pass by sort of flicking it back into Barlasser. And then, yeah, Erling's cross, fantastic, driven low across the ground. It's as if I'm seeing a right-footed ponytail Ryan Giles down the right-hand side. It's ridiculous, but yeah, we're flying at this moment in time, and it would be really nice if we could just carry it on into next season in a couple of months' time and just bury whoever we get in the first 6 games and just give us a real good chance. But yeah, we probably know that we'll be bottom of the table in October.
Yeah, I can't wait until the third game of the season when we listen back to this podcast after just being spanked 4-0 off Coventry at the CVS, sat bottom of the league, waiting for our first win. And then the reality of being a Middlesbrough fan kicks in. But yeah, I mean, there is a load of positives, and we'll use next week's podcast as a sort of end of the season awards. I think because obviously it is the natural end point of the season. We obviously have Watford. We're not going to go into detail about what to expect from Watford. It is going to be the ultimate flip flops. People will probably be checking the scores in and around the championship with more interest, but hopefully we put on a show. Hopefully we get to see more of the youngsters come on and have their moments. I mean, we saw a couple yesterday, which was nice. And obviously, especially when you are leading in a game and you can sort of, like Carrick has done a couple of times, throw a couple of youngsters on basically with no pressure and just say, go and enjoy these moments. You know, you might never get them again. I know that sounds really cruel, but go and enjoy them for what they are. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity where every single fan in that away end probably dreamt of that as a kid. Go on and express yourself. And yeah, hopefully we see a little bit more of that in the final game of the season. But I mean, yeah, Nathan, as you say, individuals wise, there was some standouts. The performance in general was good. The idea of potentially adding some players and not sort of looking at the team and thinking, oh my God, we've only got about 4 players that actually are half decent in the squad over the summer is going to be nice. It really is. And there's a lot to be made about momentum. And there's obviously momentum in play at the moment. We're on a good run. But yeah, I just hope this isn't end of season delusion setting in and actually we'll just sort of see players go back to their usual selves, not their purple patch selves as I'm talking about. But there is reason to be optimistic. There really is. And I mean, the likes of Finn Azaz, Matt Clark, we haven't even sort of individually discussed those, but 2 assists, a goal yesterday for Azaz. I think that takes him to 10 goals and 10 assists. Admittedly, yes, okay, part of those stats have come from his time at Plymouth, but even a player like that, it's just, I'm almost now at the stage where, okay, we've been great, but I want to start next season now. I want those games where they mean something and I want to really hit the ground running. But I mean, it's still, I mean, you can't complain when Middlesbrough go away from home and score 4 goals.
No, you can't. And the general conversation of this podcast has been optimism for next season. But the thing that I need to be optimistic for next season is a new deal for the manager because we want his long-term future settled at this football club. So hopefully that'll be announced soon enough and there's no mishaps where you see a David Ornstein tweet that links him with some other shit club in the Premier League, and then it just all falls apart, and my optimism levels drain to an all-time low. Um, but yeah, hopefully we see that, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to following on from next weekend, looking forward to watching the playoffs that we're not in so I can kick back and relax and see everyone cry and despair over the absolute shithousery that is the playoffs. And then looking forward to a summer pretty much on Twitter, really, of us signing some world beaters that are going to set us completely on the road to piss in the league next year.
Yeah, HMS Piss the League is due to set sail once we've added those little difference makers. Not just
August,
yet.
August 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. Nathan, we don't usually do it, but there's nothing riding on it next week. Give me one prediction for the game against Watford and also one prediction of what might happen during the lap of honour. How
That
about this for a prediction, Nathan? Sorry to interrupt. For whatever reason, there's a mic on the pitch. There's just a one stand in the centre circle. It'll probably be a nice day, hopefully, but the lights just go out. For some reason, it's become dark in the stadium, and a spotlight falls onto the centre of the pitch. Pig Bag starts playing. Michael Carrick walks onto the centre circle and just says, "It's done. I'm not going anywhere."
and he's got his contract on top of a Manjaro's takeaway box, signs it, opens the box, and takes a bite out of a Parmo.
Could we have gone any more cliche? Probably not, to be honest. But yeah, I'd still love it nonetheless. Give me your predictions, and then we're ending this because we'll just start talking shite.
um, Game prediction, I'll say 3-1 Borough. Latia Lath will score at least one. And then I'm going to go with a Clarkey Riverside bullet header. We'll say Gilbert. I'll say Gilbert because I think he'll play next week as well. And then my full-time predictions in the lap of honour, Clarkey to cause some mayhem with Greenwood because I remember the video that they did and Greenwood was like, Clarkey, behave. So
I could honestly see, I can picture it now. Someone's kid goes through on goal, no one around him, barely kicking the ball with enough power to actually get it over the line. Clarky slide tackles a kid to stop the goal.
oh God. Yeah, he's we'll do player of the year next year, but he's my honorary player of the year from probably December onwards.
I mean, yeah, we'll get into that next week and probably fiercely debate a few of the topics. But yeah, as I said, we are petering on the edge of just talking shite now. So we're gonna wrap up. Nathan, thank you ever so much for your time. I hope those of you that have watched and listened have enjoyed. Obviously, we'll talk about plans for next season and things like that for the podcast in next week's episode, in what's obviously going to be probably more of a season review than a Watford review. But yes, as always, please do like and subscribe on YouTube and obviously rate and review on your podcast providers. As always, thank you ever so much for watching and listening. And we will see you next week for the Boropolis end of season awards. Get the champers out and get a tie on. See you in a bit.